maturity and wisdom takes this kind of really deep spelunking, cave dwelling, to be able to say, oh, wait, that is a dysfunctional relationship to responsibility.
Welcome back to the Lisa LaCroix Show. I'm glad you're here. My guest today is Francesca Gentillé, a certified clinical sexologist, quantum shaman, and ordained priestess in 5 traditions. She's the co-author of The Marriage of Sex and Spirit and a professor at the International Institute of Clinical Sexology. Francesca, I'm so happy you're here again.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. We always have such delicious conversations. I can hardly wait to see what we get up to.
To see what arises in this conversation. For my listeners, if you listened to the Superpower You audio podcast, you might have already been intrigued and enthralled by Francesca's depth and her wisdom on episodes 75 and 76. When, if you recall, Francesca, we talked about your specialty in working with trauma recovery, also being a blessing to others with boundaries, sacred BDSM, and of course, my favorite, empowered aging, or what I call artful aging.
Woohoo!
One of the things I so admire about you is your dedication to impeccable communication and to taking full responsibility for your role in relationship. And so maybe we can start off by talking about your decision to approach all your relationships from the perspective of your role and the responsibility of your role alone. Is that too much context, or can you jump off? Can you riff off of that?
Yeah, I think I can rip off of that, rip. This can be confusing for a lot of us because we were raised in a culture where if you and I disagreed, then I had a couple choices. I could yell at you, I could shame you, I could, lecture you and try to beat you down into my way of thinking, or I could just stop speaking to you. And I don't know about you, but I saw all of those being used by especially by my mother growing up. If I think, how do I cook this? I look into my memory from the past. How did my mother cook it? Or how did I see it in a cooking show? So I look into my mind to figure out what to do now. Well, if we look into our mind to figure out how to have relationships, for many of us, we're looking into something that is toxic and dysfunctional. And we don't have anything that's actually functional, collaborative, responsive versus reactive, that is connective versus blaming. So I just want to say for all of y'all out here is that, we're forging a new way. We're forging a new path here. And
Yes.
we might, make some mistakes now and then.
Yes.
However, one of the things that I noticed is that I had a tendency to look at my relationships and even my life as the victim. Like bad things happen to me. If I wasn't happy and you were close to me, Lisa, it must be your fault.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't taking care of me the way I wanted. You weren't attuning, to what I needed. I shouldn't have to tell you, by the way. You
Right.
should just know. And if I ever mentioned it in passing, you should have had that indelibly etched into your brain. If you really loved me, if you really loved me. And because you're not following the script that if you loved me, you would have figured out by now, then I would start to justify, once again, the shaming, the criticizing, the resenting. And I would feel like, if I was talking to you, I'd be like, Lisa, my partner doesn't understand me. Lisa, my partner forgot my birthday. Lisa, my partner, I've told them 5 times what I like in bed, but they don't remember. Oh, how I suffer. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
how I suffer. And I actually spent decades in that way of interacting with partners. And I found it to be, I invite us to have an inner scientist that reviews the data of our lives. If something's effective, let's keep doing it. If cooking that and adding a little cinnamon and nutmeg really makes the difference, let's keep adding cinnamon and nutmeg. If 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 cooking it longer makes the meat tastier, then let's cook it longer. But if we're doing a recipe and it's like, wow, every time I do that recipe, it's the cake isn't rising or the meat is still tough. Or, if we're doing a recipe over and over again that's not working, then rather than just blaming the meat or the oven, maybe we should start to look at how we're interacting with that recipe and what can we change. So what I'm inviting in is that there's a power, like a delicious power, a yummy power in accountability. If I just say the recipe's wrong, the oven's bad, the meat, the butcher didn't give me a good cut of meat, I'm powerless in all of
You're
that.
totally disempowering yourself and giving yourself no place to go. And this is our cultural history. It's not only our personal history, but it's become so entrenched in our way of relating that we almost don't notice that we do it. We almost don't question it. And it becomes the standard protocol, becomes the water that we're swimming in.
100%. And so let's say I like the recipe metaphor. I'm using it right now. Let's say I decide, what do I have power over? I can change the recipe. I can experiment with the recipe. I could go to a different butcher and see if the meat makes a difference. I could turn up the heat or turn it lower and cook it longer. I have agency here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Where do I have agency? Where can I shift something that makes a difference? Now, it doesn't mean that the butchers and their meat might not make a difference, or that the oven might not make a difference. And I'm going to be empowered when I take on agency. If I just complain, which, I've had a tendency to do and we can do, is just complain, 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 as if that makes a difference.
Right.
I don't like my oven. Has anything changed? So if I say I don't like what my partner does, or I don't like the way they treat me, or I don't like that they forget my birthday, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
And if I even say to them, I don't like I don't like that you forgot my birthday. I don't like that you forget the way that I like to be touched. I don't like that you do this. Complaint actually doesn't create change.
Wow.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And it feels so juicy when I complain, and then it doesn't create change. I just want to breathe that in.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the human psyche that complaining feels juicy.
Mm.
And it feels like it's productive, as if it's productive.
Yeah. What is that? It occurs to me that it's something like a bit of a diffuser of tension and energy, and that we think that in the diffusing of it, we get relief from it so that it's fixing something. But in fact, it really doesn't, like you say, it doesn't change anything. It just diffuses a little bit of the tension in that moment. Maybe it even exacerbates the tension and the discomfort.
I find that it's more effective to speak from vision versus complaint.
Nice.
Rather than saying, you forgot my birthday, you're a jerk, clearly I'm not important to you, you don't really love me, which is a lot of assumptions, is to say, wow, I noticed that you forgot my birthday, and I noticed that I enjoy my birthday being remembered. How can I collaborate with you to have that be something you remember? What's a structure we can put in place that would have it likely to remember my birthday? And that would just mean so much to me. And I know we all get busy and forgetful and life can get overwhelming. So how can I collaborate with you to have that happen?
So I love that collaboration piece and the co-design that you bring to your clients and also to your own relationships, and how you model it, because that's one thing you also do beautifully, is that you live your life out loud and you write about it in gorgeous ways, and you reveal and you show as you spiral up through this process of unfolding as a human being. And when you're experiencing something, you share it in a very transparent way, which I think is really quite beautiful. It's something I'm a fan of personally. I think it's the way that we connect in deeper ways and the way that we get to learn from each other. And so when you're working with people, you're often working about, and we talked before about bridging differences between people who want different things in relationships. So I know that that is something that's really a superpower that you bring to your coaching, to your healing, to your support of couples. But the other thing that I think you're touching on that I don't want to lose sight of is that there's a constant need for repair, that we're constantly breaking down and finding new ways and coming back together, and how we navigate the need for repair has such a big impact. And I think going back to where you started this conversation, that's where we have these habitual places where we don't deal with repair very well.
There's a part of me that always wants to know, do you like me and am I safe? And then there's another part of me that if we're in relationship always wants to know, but do you think I'm pretty? But do you think I'm pretty? But do you really think I'm pretty? But do you think I'm pretty? But really, do you think I'm pretty? Am I pretty? And it's very young. You can tell that these are very young, and they're kind of almost unanswerable questions. And if I put them on my partner, it can become very, very draining.
Yeah.
So with my clients and myself, I often look for, where is there something that starts to be really familiar? Is this, in my life, do I question that I'm worthy enough or beautiful enough or talented enough or chosen enough or listened to enough or whatever all that is? Like, can I start to harvest, be the scientist of my own life and say, what are some of those thoughts that are really negative but kind of normal in my brain? And if poof, my partner is gone, I actually still will end up with these thoughts.
Yeah.
Like if I go to a party, they'll show up. If I go on a date, they'll show up. It's like, oh, these are my thoughts. To start to own that there are certain thoughts that belong to us, and that someone might trigger it, or an environment might trigger it, doesn't make it the environment's fault. So I'll reveal something about me. There's not a party, festival, event, workshop that I've ever been to that sooner or later I'm not in the bathroom, a back hallway, behind the building, crying because I feel lonely and left out.
That is so human.
Like I don't, I'm not really like the cool kid that's being included, and it will come up, and it's come up so often.
Yes.
That I've started, it's going to come up. So this feeling of being alone and left out is going to come up. And now, given that it's going to happen, it's not if it'll happen, it's when it happens. What am I going to do with my inner tribe, with my inner family, to self-soothe them in this moment? What am I going to do to hold those parts of me that really were lonely as a child?
Yeah, I love that you bring the inner aspect work into it and use that as a tool for that human truth for all of us, where we experience something as children that becomes part of our story, that then I know through Imago, the Imago work and Harville Hendrix work, that says then we'll just keep choosing people and situations where we'll have that repeated all over again. And if they're not exactly the same, then we'll make them the same somehow. And I love that you bring those inner aspects and those characters.
Let's say that, my partner forgets my birthday, which did happen at one point. The partner I had at the time, at one time, he forgot my birthday. Well, if I'm working with my inner family first, foundationally, when they freak out and start to make assumptions, this means that he doesn't love me. This means that I'm not important. This means that he's not a good partner. It's my job to slow that down and say, fact versus story. Fact is, he forgot my birthday. Anything else I add to that is a story that I'm putting on top of that fact, which isn't going to help us. So can we just let it be a fact and be curious? Be curious about what happened for him, or be curious what it might mean for him. Maybe he forgets everybody's birthday,
And what is it in my history or my experience that had me choose that meaning to project onto it? Because then you get more self-understanding, you get more self-awareness.
And I'll tell you the story with this particular partner of me shifting, like me doing my inner work. It's Valentine's. I come to his house. He's cooked a beautiful dinner. The candles are lit. The table is beautifully set. There's flowers on the table for me. There's a present on my plate for me. There's a card. I would find out later upstairs that there were like wrapped presents on my pillow. And if you know the 5 love languages, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, touch, and gifts. My first one is actually words of affirmation. And it's words of affirmation and touch ideally together. But words of affirmation is number one. So I saved the card to be the last thing I would open because it was so important. And when I opened the card, he had just written, love Pete. And I felt rage. He didn't write anything. He didn't write anything meaningful, Lisa. Oh my God, he just wrote love Pete. And I didn't speak to him for the rest of the evening.
Everything else just went poof.
None of the rest of it mattered. And this poor man is like going out of his way to create this beautiful evening. And this one little thing, I'm making it all terrible and that he doesn't care about me. And this is an awful boyfriend. Well, luckily, I ended up taking personal growth work and entering into a coursework that really had me do what I'm inviting, where we look at our stories, where we look at our mind, where we look at these questions. And so I'd done a lot of work. And somewhere in the ensuing year, we had talked about that it was going to be my 40th birthday and wanting to go to Greece for my 40th birthday. And we ended up not going on my actual birthday. We ended up going a different time of the year. And he actually ended up gifting me that trip. So now it's July and it's the day after my birthday. And Pete runs down the steps, pound, 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 throws himself onto his knees next to the couch and says, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Sorry about what, honey? I forgot your birthday. It was yesterday. I didn't give you a card. I didn't do anything." And I said, "Oh yeah, but you did do something." He goes, "What?" I said, months ago when we went to Greece, we said that would count as my birthday. And he kind of looked at me like, "Who is this new girlfriend? Who is this person who's not, this?" He was like so frightened that I was going to have that big response like I had at Valentine's.
Yeah.
But my personal work meant that I didn't have to.
That's a beautiful story and so illustrative of what I'm sure many people will recognize in their own lives. And I know that the more that I've done that same inner work and started to look more deeply and more closely at the ways that I've unconsciously sometimes even sadly consciously done harm in my close relationships, and the more that I see and recognize the shadow sides of myself and the needs that weren't met, and then what my reaction was to those unmet needs, instead of bringing them to consciousness and taking responsibility for them, that sometimes I lashed out and sometimes I did harm. And it's taken me a long time to take full responsibility for those things. At the end of my 20-year marriage, I went really deeply into blame and victimization, and there's obviously there's always many complex stories around it, but the bottom line is that for me, the real freedom came when I was able to take responsibility for all the ways that I had done harm and make reparations to the best of my ability for those things. And the irony is that when we do that, we get ourselves, we get our own liberation, and we get the truth of our own hearts back.
It's super freeing. We're not taught this growing up.
Right.
And so growing up, I was afraid to take responsibility because if I said I broke the cookie jar, I would be hit. I would be yelled at. So my parents weren't training me to be more honest. They were training me unconsciously to lie better. And they were training me to avoid responsibility because taking responsibility would mean punishment.
Right.
So then as an adult, I just keep deflecting. I'm not going to take responsibility. I'm not going to take responsibility. It was your fault. You made me. It's your fault. I wouldn't have yelled at you if you hadn't have done this. I wouldn't have acted out this way if you hadn't have done this. But I didn't realize that by being in that avoid responsibility and point fingers model, I was actually stuck in developmentally in a disempowered child.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea if that's what I was doing because, the body keeps getting older. So I assumed that I was getting more mature or wiser. Not so. And that actual maturity and wisdom takes this kind of really deep spelunking, cave dwelling, to be able to say, oh, wait, that is a dysfunctional relationship to responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would be a mature adult relatedness to responsibility and accountability? And that's where I feel strong enough about myself, where I feel enough self love, where I
Yes.
feel like I can say, I did do this. It was not okay. I take accountability for what I say and don't say, do and don't do. You don't make me.
Mm.
You don't make me love you, hate you. You didn't make me yell at you. You
Yeah.
didn't make me have an affair. It releases this causality.
Yeah.
And then I step into adulthood.
Yes.
I choose.
Yeah.
I choose. And that's true freedom. True freedom is when I actually can choose my own actions and reactions and when I take accountability for them. If I'm saying, you don't give me my freedom, I want my freedom. Freedom is not something in relationship that somebody else gives you or takes away as an adult. As an adult,
Yes.
as children, parents could give or take away our freedom. But as an adult, if I'm saying, Lisa, you're not giving me enough freedom, I've forgotten that I'm an
You've
adult.
just abdicated all of your freedom right there and then. Boom.
Right. I had one of my friends once said that he was trying to break up with his girlfriend. And I said, well, how did the conversation go? And he said, oh, she told me that I couldn't break up with her.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, so what did you do? And he said, well, she told me I couldn't break up with her, so I didn't. And I'm like, what? What? Because once again, in that moment, he was a kidnapped child
Yeah.
where some authority figure is saying, I'm not going to let you do this.
Yeah.
But as an adult, I'm agreeing to my commitments or I'm saying I need to change my commitments.
Yes.
You're
100%.
not making me fulfill my integrity. There's only one
Yeah.
person who can make me fulfill my integrity, and that's me. There's no
Right.
vow I could make, no promise I could make
Yeah.
in front of hundreds or thousands of people that anyone else could force me to stay true to. It doesn't matter. The only person that is actually accountable for whether I do that or not is me. And I invite us to think that the personal is universal, that
Mm.
there's no sadness, no grieving, no rage, no joy. There's nothing that we personally can go through that there aren't millions or billions of people on the planet going through. And too often, people aren't really revealing their journey. They're having the fake book life, the Insta awesome life. They're having this life that pretends something rather than actually saying, these are my struggles. This is what I go through. And we can't know what it looks like to transform, tragedy to triumph or victim to victory if we don't see people in the journey. So I try, even when I'm really nervous about posting, it's like, oh, I don't want to reveal that, or oh, I'm really, really frightened how people are going to respond. I ask myself, do I think that people are also suffering like this? Do I think that this could make a difference? Then I'm gonna press post, even if I'm afraid. I talked about how I had an ex-partner come back to me after like a decade and say that I'd raped him. And on the phone call, I said, I just really want to slow this down. And, would you say more about your experience and what happened that night? Um, and, but in my mind, I'm thinking, rape him? Like, I couldn't even think about, I couldn't put that in context because I'm thinking, I never raped him. Like, what is he talking about? So in my mind, from my perspective, I'd never raped him. And a part of me almost wanted to diminish, like that couldn't have happened. I'm a woman, you're a man. We were in relationship. Like I wanted to diminish or minimize his experience. But my higher self said, don't do it, Francesca. Don't do it. Well, what should I do instead? Think about, if you were able to confront a man that you felt had raped you or crossed your boundaries in some way, how would you want him to respond? So respond to your ex like that. So I just said, tell me what that was like for you. And it was a night where we had actually planned a sexy foursome with another couple, and we'd planned it for weeks, and everything was going fine. The candles were lit, the little nests, next to each other were created. We were each starting to like make out with our own partner. We hadn't done anything together, and something triggered my partner. And he tried to say that something was off or he wasn't feeling it. And in that moment, I was more committed to an outcome. Oh, we're going to have a sexy foursome. I was committed to the outcome more than I was committed to being attuned to what my partner needed. And how many times has somebody in a relationship been more committed to somebody having an orgasm or some kind of outcome that they lose attunement, seeing, feeling, and hearing their beloved accurately? So in that moment, it was me. I wanted this sexy foursome. I wasn't listening to his no. And so I started to, oh, come on, honey. We've been thinking about this for weeks. You really want this. Come on, come on. I started kissing him. I started, giving him oral sex. And at one point he said, stop, I need to go to the bathroom. Well, on the phone that day, he said, do you know what happened when I left the room? I said, you went to the bathroom? He said, no, I went outside and threw up. I said, wow, I didn't know that happened. And he said that he hadn't realized that his psyche was responding to this as a rape until years later, when a female friend of his was describing her trauma response to being raped, her disassociation, her nausea, her distrust in the future. And he said, I had all the experiences that she had, Francesca. I took a deep breath and I said, whatever you said happened, and it wasn't okay, and you didn't deserve that. And I take 100% accountability that I was more attached to an outcome than I was committed to staying connected to you as a tender human being, and that I raped you. And he said, wow, I didn't expect you to take this so well. And then I took another deep breath and I said, I take 100% accountability that I taught you to believe that I wouldn't hear you.
Yeah, I relate to that.
And then I said, is there any other impact that you want to share with me? And he said he'd already shared the impact. And I said, is there anything I can do today to make it right? And he said, you can, let people know that you're a rapist, and you can let people know that women can rape men. And, let me know that you talk about it. So, occasions like this, I, let him know that I'm still sharing about it, that I'm still teaching about it. And today we actually have a really good relationship because that was our restore and repair process.
Yeah.
Was me validating his experience without, and these are the two mistakes people can make, is one mistake is diminishing, minimizing. Oh, it wasn't like that. It didn't happen like that. I don't remember it like that. You're making too much out of it. You're still worried about something that happened a decade ago, minimizing, dismissing. That's one mistake we can make. The other mistake we can make is have it be about us. And this looks like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I'm such a terrible person. Oh my God, I can understand how you wouldn't want to speak to me. Like my collapsing into a sense of, making myself wrong actually doesn't restore and repair.
No.
It makes it about me.
Yeah.
It turns it into self-absorption. So the center place is actually to be strong, feet on the earth, heart open, and breathe ventral vagal is in the nose, twice as long out the mouth, and stay strong as we take accountability, not get weak.
So beautiful. Like you say, like I learned this from you. Let's breathe that in.
Let's breathe that in.
Mm.
I have a tendency to have a bit of anxious attachment. Am I pretty? Do you like me? Are you still here? Am I safe? My little girl has a tendency when she gets, close to someone or in love with someone to like, if I let her, want a lot of reassurance. And so I was dating someone who was in another city, and our communication was mostly Zooming and texting and writing. And there was a point where he felt like he needed space. Like he was going through his own kind of death and rebirth process, and he would end up quitting his job. He would end up, kind of selling everything he owned. He would end up going through a real kind of death and rebirth. Like I've spent so many years fulfilling my parents' dreams. I've spent so many years fulfilling what other people want me to be. It's important for me now to discover who I am, is what he was saying, and that he needed to clear the slate. And he needed space from me as well. So he asked for a month of no contact. And I had, I always, at this point in my life, I have a very strong connection with what I call my higher self. I didn't used to, but I do now. So the higher self, the soul's voice, the still quiet voice of the soul, it calms the mind, it opens the heart, it uplifts the spirit, it has a sense of clarity and peace. If it doesn't sound like that, it's not the voice of the soul. But I am capable of discerning that voice now. So I turned to that voice and I said, should I give him this month of no contact? And this part of me said, yes. In the month of no contact, one day I would be thinking, that asshole, he's so selfish. How dare he just want no contact and not even be willing to text or do anything, that jerk. And then the next day I'd be thinking, wow, I'm so proud of him. It takes a lot to reboot your entire life and to put your whole life at stake. I'm really proud of him and impressed. And then the next day I might be like, I just really miss him, and I just love him, and I really like talking to him, and I just feel lonely. And then I would cycle through those voices. And then I'd go back to like, he's such a jerk. And then I'd go back to, I'm so proud of him. Well, after a few days of this, my higher self said, Francesca, I'm like, what? Do you notice that you have like a few loud voices that you're kind of cycling through in this time period of no contact? Yeah, yeah. And my higher self said, it's time. And I said, time for what? And my higher self said, it's time for you to actually listen to the thoughts in your head, to observe them, to watch them, not just be consumed by them. And so I have some options for you. I said, oh, what are my options? You could go to a Vipassana, silent 21-day Vipassana retreat and just sit in silence, observing your thoughts. Or you could go to one of those dark rooms that's completely pitch black, and you could, hire that for a few weeks and sit in that black room and just watch your thoughts. Or you could powerfully choose this time to observe your thoughts, but not be kidnapped by them in this time of no contact. Which do you choose? I think I choose to stay in this time of no contact and learn to observe my thoughts. And so I called it, like the temple of, I'm going to use a name that's not his name, the Temple of Orion, that it was the Temple of Orion, and it was my opportunity to observe my own thoughts.
Mm.
And doing that for a month, I came out stronger.
Yeah.
Because once again, as an adult, I am powerfully choosing my experiences rather than going, oh, this guy I really like, Lisa, he asked for a month of no contact and it's really hard. And,
Yeah.
he's a jerk. He's such a selfish jerk, but I'm really proud of him and I miss him. Like, this is how people talk. He's such a selfish jerk. I'm really proud of him. I miss him without
Yeah.
any concept that these are three different inner aspects.
Yeah. My teacher, John Wineland, says, fuck you, I love you.
Which are two different parts of us.
Yeah, totally. And they're both parts of the same thing. I think the thing that I'm struck with by that story, besides the beauty of you taking responsibility, is that in the end, how that is about freedom and about sovereignty. And I would take it in that direction because we both we share a passion for and a commitment to modeling what it means to age in a different way. And I think you call it empowered aging, I call it artful aging, you call it being in your 60s. Now you're in your 60s and I'm coming up on that decade also. But the thing that I feel really present to is that it takes being in a position of sovereignty, which means not needing other people for our approval, not needing other people to make us okay or to make us whole, not needing other people to take care of us. And that in this place of sovereignty that I feel like I've come into in a whole new way in the second half of my 50s, that from that place is the place where I can be in service to epic love, where I can be in service to the healing that's needed in the world. And I think we share, you might use different words, you have different paths and a different approach, but I feel very aligned with you and very linked arms with you in both the experience of coming to sovereignty through personal responsibility and then using that place of sovereignty. I call it coming from the archetype of the erotic high priestess. I'm not an ordained priestess, so I say it's the archetype of the erotic high priestess. But from that place, being in service to younger women, men, other people, for the healing of the planet, for the healing of the masculine and feminine together, so we can experience this deeper kind of love. So you are aligned in that too, and I'm wondering where you want to pick up that thread.
I just want to separate out a couple things that I hear in culture. One is that sovereignty is not selfishness. And if we're
Right.
just saying, I've heard some people be like, I'm sovereign, meaning I want what I want when I want it. I'm sovereign. So I'm
Oh,
just going to like create it my way. That's not being sovereign.
no.
That's being selfish.
Yeah, that's not what I meant by sovereign.
Right. No, I
For
know.
sure.
I know that's not what you meant, but I just wanted to distinguish for people. If we are a sovereign, which is a ruler, then we have a realm. And the realm is our core values.
Mm.
I serve the realm of my core values. And if I don't have core values that are about something other than me,
Oh,
then I am not truly a ruler. I am not truly reigning. I am not a noble ruler in it. I'm not a noble sovereign. So we move into core values could be kindness, peace, collaboration. It could be a world of freedom. But then if it's a world of freedom, I say true freedom is our ability to choose our own actions and reactions from the inside out. True freedom in relationship is not something that someone gives me or takes away. So we're creating a realm that we're serving, a mission that we're
mm.
serving. And then I also want to say that within this path of impeccable accountability that we're going to make mistakes on, in this path we get to have limits and boundaries. So the same man that asked for a month of no contact asked me to hold space for him in a certain way in his process for a year. And I looked inside and I consulted with my higher self. I consulted with my integrating self, my wise self. Can I, with integrity, hold this for a year? And the answer was no. What can I do with integrity? With integrity, I can hold this container for 6 months. And so with integrity, I did, even when it was difficult. So when we're an adult, if I'm married to you and we're in a monogamous relationship, and I look inside, am I committing to monogamy with Lisa for life? Okay, I am. Now, let's say for some reason I'm finding that I can't keep doing that for some reason. Let's say you go through menopause and no longer want to have sex with me. Then I can look inside and say, do I want to be married to Lisa? Yes. But do I want to have sex? Yes. So I need to find the courage to talk to Lisa and say, in integrity with myself and in love for you, I need to renegotiate what our commitment is and what our container is and what I can hold with integrity. With integrity, I can be your partner for life. With integrity, maybe I'm the main provider. With integrity, I can help take care of our children. And with integrity, I will not be able to say that I won't have sex for the rest of my life because you are no longer able and willing to have sex. I can, with integrity, not force you or not make you be sexual with me. And in love for myself, I'm choosing to keep sexuality vibrant in my life. I'm willing to brainstorm with you how that might look. And I'm not, in integrity with my own self-love, able to stay in a relationship that is giving me an ultimatum that I can't have sex for the rest of my life.
And the first thing needed to have that kind of conversation is for both people to know themselves and have self-awareness, and to be able to share it with integrity and honesty and transparency what is actually true for them, so the negotiations can begin.
And part of that, like you said, when you said I don't need people, like a part of my little person was like, but I still want them.
Oh, yes.
Like, do I still want everybody to like me? Yes.
Yeah.
Do I still want a partner who is, enthusiastically inspired to make love, with me and sometimes to me, or serve me and be served by me erotically? Do I absolutely want that? Yes. And when I was younger, in a way, I would almost sell my soul for that.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction, because as I just named that off the cuff, don't need people. Of course, we need people. And of course, we want people. And I think that you're bringing some nuance to that idea of needing people, because it's true. We can have the desire, the need is it takes on a different texture when, like you say, we're willing to give up ourselves for what it is we think ourselves need.
Yeah, today I wouldn't split like in the past. I would, there might be a part of me that really wants love, and then a part of me that feels that I'm not lovable.
Right.
And that there are things that I can't ask for, things that I'm not worthy of asking for. And so this part would maybe overgive to get love.
Yeah.
And abandon my boundaries, abandon maybe even sometimes my core values in order to get this person to love me. And today I really, it took a heck of a long time, but I actually really love myself. It's so weird. It's so weird to actually love myself.
Well, that's what transformation does. You almost don't recognize the new you when you're healing generational or past childhood wounds, right? It's like, who is this?
Who is this? Like I was saying to one of my clients that my brain is actually at peace.
Yeah.
But when I was, before, it would be like parts of me that would be yelling at me, criticizing me, telling me I was ugly or stupid or failing. And that's not to say it never comes up, but it comes up more quietly and it's more soothed more quickly. Oh, honey, yeah, you're feeling like we didn't do that right. Yeah, how would you have wanted us to do it? It's like it moves through much quicker to a place of stasis and peace again. I have all the human emotions.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're integrated is the other thing. It sounds like that the way that, as you're describing the current stage of it, it's not that they don't exist anymore, but that you have perspective on them, and that perspective allows you to integrate them into the whole of you.
I would say that even though I fought this for a long time, that I now have a caregivers internally for me. So for a long time, unconsciously, if I was dating you, I wanted you to save me.
Yeah.
I wanted you to take away the pain of being me. And I hoped that if I overgave to you, you would turn around and overgive to me, and you would save me from my sense of worthlessness. You would save me from my sense of incompletion. You would save me from my loneliness. And to eventually, sometimes kind of resisting, but in therapy and workshops, eventually I recognized that I could, if, I could have a big boardroom table with all my inner voices sitting around them, that I didn't have someone at the head of the table, that I didn't
Mm.
have, like the head of the boardroom table, the CEO, you could say the ruler of the realm. I didn't have a part of me that would listen to all the voices and say, I value you, you're important, I value you anger. You let me know where my boundaries are. I
Mhm.
value you generosity. You have you have such beautiful connection with others. I value you selfishness. You keep me from overgiving. I value you, that would actually say to every voice, I value you. And then I developed an inner nurturer that I didn't used to have, that would say, I love you. You get to make mistakes. Really? And I love you. Nobody gets everything done in a day. And I love you. Uh, it's understandable that you feel that way. And I love you. I had a very loud inner critic,
Mhm.
but I didn't have an inner nurturer for me. And
Mm.
having those two is actually the structure that holds these voices
Mm.
and lets them start to calm down. And then, having a good scientist, I in my like, the Queen has a wisdom council or an advisory board.
Yes.
I have a researcher that's like, let's look at the data. Let's look at the data. So I have other parts that also help with calmness, help with slowing down. But the main two are the integrating self and the inner nurturer.
It's beautiful. Really, really clear description and illustration of the way some of those inner aspects work. And I love the metaphor of the realm and how you express that. There needs to be someone who is governing the realm. So beautiful. There's another piece I want to wrap up fairly soon, because and even if it means we might have to do another one, because there's always so much to talk about with you. But I want to touch on the piece that we discussed the other day, and that is the idea of who's in charge. And the segue from where we are right now for me is that from this sovereign place where you are able to and willing to be in service of something that is not about you, as you just so beautifully said. To me, that is the energy of this stage of life that I'm experiencing right now. And I personally made this commitment through through a practice that I was doing that was led by Kendra Kunov, to make the decision that I'm in service of epic love, of the healing between the masculine and the feminine, even if it is not for me in this lifetime, even as, like you, I might desire, hope, want, dream, envision, be open to, explore. But in the end, the being in service of epic love is more important than me having it for myself. And that seems and feels very characteristic of this stage of life to me. And so I want to use that as a segue to talk about something that you mentioned the other day, that we both share so much compassion for men and for the masculine in this time, especially post Me Too. There's so much need and pain and heartbrokenness and fear in the masculine right now in this world. And I feel like both of us are really wanting to be and are in service of supporting that. And so I'd love to segue that into something you said to me the other day that was so beautiful. And that is that you can re-paraphrase or reclaim and deepen into this thing, the idea that as feminine beings, it is to some degree our job to support and nurture and help the masculine evolve and grow. But you say it in your way now.
Yeah, the way that I like to say it with where we are in culture today,
Yeah.
that regardless of body,
Yeah.
we all have some, you know, inner aspects. I use my cards, as examples of different parts of me. So we all have these different inner aspects, these different parts, these different voices that, inside. And in any human being, when we look inside, we may discover most of these actually identify as masculine, regardless of my body, or most of these identify as feminine, regardless of my body, or many of these, maybe it's somewhat equal. And then depending on the day, some of them are more forward and some of them are more back. So I'm feeling more feminine or I'm feeling more masculine, which is our gender fluid people. So what I've studied in some of my shamanic trainings, priestess trainings, metaphysical trainings, is that the energy of the more yin energy, which is more flowing, more sensitive, more attuning, that this energy, whoever carries the most of that energy, which we might also say is yin or feminine, is whoever carries that energy is actually meant to guide in the realms of sexuality, emotion, spirituality, because it's someone who has a more water energy. And so they're going to more easily attune to those kinds of rhythms in the quantum field, in the emotional realm, in the relational realm. And someone who has the more yang, which is the more proposive, directive, give me a recipe, give me the steps, let's, tell me what you want to build and I'll build it. That type of energy, that more yang or masculine energy is meant to take charge or lead in building, in structure. When and where is structure needed? That energy is meant to guide. Now, some of us have both. So when we're, if we dance between both, if I'm tuning into, let's say, the vision of our relationship, Lisa, if I'm tuning in, I'm going to be feeling expansive and reaching out to spirit. I'm going to be tuning into a flow. And maybe I start to get a vision of you and I co-creating these like epic love temples for couples, and I'm seeing like veils and candles and incense and beautiful music. So I'm getting this like vision, and maybe you're getting the vision and you're adding in, and there's flowers or whatever, and you're adding and we're visioning. But there'll need to be a point where we shift from this flowing intuitive vision into structure. What are the steps? How does it get built? When is it going to happen? And most of us will be stronger in one of those areas than another. And so we often collaborate well with people, either collaborate well with people who complement, or in building like an organizational structure, we need to have some of those people that, have the ones that maybe we're not as strong in. Now, if in a heteronormative world, many female bodied who are assigned female at birth and identify, yes, I love how I was assigned, I vibe with that, will often have more of this kind of flowing, visionary, intuitive, sensitive, and often assigned male at birth and vibing with it, love being assigned male at birth, really vibe with that, will often have this sense of like structure and purposive and what are the steps, and let's get this done, let's get it into time, let's get it into how many of this are we going to need to create that. And it's just really a matter of the term dominant in the dictionary is defined as competent, confident, and holding authority.
Oh, I didn't
Competent,
know that. I love that.
and holding authority.
I
So
love
the
it.
chef is the dominant in the restaurant kitchen, the surgeon's the dominant in the surgery, the teacher is the dominant in the classroom, parent is the dominant in the family, and domineering is tyrannical, arrogant, controlling. And we confuse dominant and domineering. We think to be dominant is to be domineering. They're two different words. And we want to separate out domineering as a toxic or dysfunctional way of being. And we want to say dominant is where we have a sense of competence, confidence, and therefore can hold authority. So we want to look inside, regardless of our body, and say, in my inner aspects, when it comes to vision, when it comes to creativity, when it comes to structure, when it comes to money, when it comes to building, when it comes to whatever, where do I have confidence, competence, and therefore can hold authority and be the dominant? And where don't I? And to just, develop our own clarity with that and be able to communicate that when we're in a collaborative dating process.
Oh, so many beautiful nuances in that. I so adore how deep and nuanced you're able to share things. I'm just there's so many nuggets in this conversation. Before we end, though, and I know we could keep on going and going. I feel like there's like probably 5 different threads I'd love to go circle back and go deeper on, but in the spirit of time and maybe saving some topics for another conversation, I know you have some things coming up. I'm hoping to publish this episode pretty quickly. So I know you have an offering coming up in upstate New York. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I've collaborating with Shadi, who is a non-binary person. We're teaching the shamanic kink immersion. And shamanic kink is an exploration in power exchange, sensation, and role play, and bringing in the ancient roots of BDSM, power exchange, role play, and sensation as they were used in ceremonies of atonement, of vision quest, of prayer, of healing. And so we're really looking at how do we utilize these tools. Some of them will have a crossover with Tantra as well. And so for people who maybe aren't into the world of BDSM, but are a little bit curious, but would want to do it in a sacred way, a conscious way, a shamanic healing way, great immersion, week-long immersion. And for people who are in the BDSM community, but are starting to have that curiosity and hunger for what they're feeling in the energy, like how deep could this go? How consciously healing could it become? How transformational can we make this? It's great for either
Bridging
direction,
differences.
bridging differences, and great for couples where one is more kinky than another, also great for that. And we'll be doing it next year also in upstate New York in June and in Sicily in September, the Shamanic Kink Immersion. Ongoingly, for people who like something cozy and hearth-based, I do bring a mug, and monthly we have kitchen table shamanism where we meet via Zoom with a mug of something. And I learned about shamanism literally at the kitchen table of women at farmhouses in various places. And so I bring this very cozy way of learning how to attune with the energies of the moon, the sun, the cycles of the seasons, the masculine, the feminine, the elements, and how to really bring this more consciously into our lives. In January, I have the Tantric Shamanic Somatic Healer certification. That's 6 months. And that's combining Tantra, shamanism, and the inner aspect method to be able to actually transform people's lives in person as well as via Zoom. So that starts in January. And then also in February, if you're a clinician or a coach, through the Institute, I teach kink conscious clinical care. So that's how to be a coach or a therapist who is able to work with individuals and couples who identify as kinky or kink curious in a way that collaborates with them, helps them assess where are the sources of some of the things that they're desiring, helps them do it in a safer way, and even can just help you understand their world so that you don't have to be afraid when they say that they're kinky or they say that they're in an alternative lifestyle in some way.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I will put all the links to all of those offerings in the show notes so people can follow up with you and learn more if they're so inclined. I want to say thank you so much for being here, for your wisdom, for your depth, for your beautiful, nuanced ways of expressing and understanding things. It expands everyone's consciousness. So thank you.
Oh, and thank you so much for being such a soul kindred in this path and this path of I love that you say epic love and really supporting people to have, divine embodiment of relationships on earth.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you're here with us today and you've gotten something from this conversation or from any of the other episodes, please do subscribe to the channel, send it on to someone else. And in the meantime, you can see another playlist here or another video on this side. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you again next week.